Hi friends, my name is Hala and I am a professional Christian life coach and educator, and also the host of the Purpose-Filled Life podcast. My passion in life is helping women to figure out exactly who they specifically were created to be. The way that I do that is to help them identify their values, passions, and talents so they can live the purpose-filled life that God's already designed for them. Each week, I share different coaching tips or strategies for how to live that purpose-filled life. And today, I'm sharing an interview with an amazing woman named Sarah Welch. Sarah is a mom, a health coach, an advocate for clean living, and she loves helping women, as she says, get their sparkle back. In our conversation today, we talk about so many things. Sarah shares about how turning 30 was actually an awesome experience and not a dreaded experience like many people think. We talk about how to protect yourself from people pleasing, the deep wrestling between mom life and work life, and how to determine what's best for you and your families and be confident in that. And she talks about just how to set up boundaries with saying yes and no, and understanding what serves you. Sarah shares some really vulnerable stories about her family and different challenges that she's faced and what she's learned from them. We also talk about how growth comes from challenges. I'm so excited for you to learn from Sarah and her experience and how she's living out her purpose today. I won't waste any more time on this introduction. Without further ado, here is my interview with Sarah Welch. Hi, my name is Hala. As a professional life coach, I help women identify and put into action their values, passions, and talents so they can live the purpose-filled life God's already designed for them. Are you ready to live a purpose-filled life? Let's do this. Sarah, welcome to the Purpose-Filled Life podcast. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. So just for our listeners, let's start out with just introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, my name is Sarah. I am 34. I am married. I have 2 children. I have a little boy he's huge actually. He's 6 and I swear he's going to be as tall as me by the time he's 10. He's just shooting up like a weed. And then I have a 3-year-old daughter, Elizabeth. We live on the North Shore of Massachusetts. We live intergenerationally with my mom and dad, which has been pretty amazing. We have 17 chickens and 3 ducks and a dog. So slowly making our own tiny little farm. I would say we're homesteading, but we're not that cool by any stretch. We just like to eat the eggs. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what the intro's so hard. I'm like, how far back do I go? Currently, I manage a boutique for my 9 to 5, and it's an online-based boutique. It's called Blue Thistle Co. It's awesome. You guys should check it out. It's all clothing for women. It's very fun with 2 friends who own the business and are amazing people. And then I also, I'm a health coach, and I've been doing that for about 10 years now, off and on. And I'm a coach with the Faster Way to Fat Loss, which is a really awesome exercise nutrition program, mostly for women, but now men do it too, which is pretty fun. And I also sell Beauty Counter.
Wow. So many dabblings in things.
Little dabblings, yes.
It's so fun. Okay, so with these dabblings,
yeah,
how would you describe the phase of life that you're currently in?
Oh man, I feel like this has been one of my favorite phases of life. It is so full and rich, but I'm sure it's a combination of the pandemic and just kind of hitting my groove in a different way. Turning 30 just felt awesome. It was a different kind of confidence or comfortability, I guess, in myself. I would say that I've always been pretty comfortable in my own skin, but turning 30, I felt like, okay, I'm growing still, but the principles of who I am are pretty solidified, and I feel pretty unapologetic about that. Not in a so take it or leave it, like not in a snotty kind of way, but just in a like, okay, this is like, I know the foundation of who the Lord has built me to be, and I'm very accepting of the things that I'm really excelling at and kind of finding a rhythm in those things and owning them. And I'm also sort of accepting the things that I'm just not so great at and recognizing that that's a very real piece of me too, and learning how to navigate that maybe a little bit more graciously. And then really figuring out how to say no to stuff.
Wow.
So I'm in a season where I know where my priorities are, and I'm able to say yes to them and no to things that don't fit it, which has taken a long time because I'm definitely a people pleaser, and really have this deep desire to be liked, which is, I think, normal, but also sort of an extreme for me too, and can, in seasons of my life, has stopped me, I think, from being able to say, actually, like, that's not okay with me, or I don't want you to treat me this way, or, and so I'm just kind of okay with that now a little bit more. So I think I feel like I'm in I'm in a sparkly season right now.
Ooh, a sparkly season.
It's like the baby brain fog is slowly, now that my daughter's 3 and I just stopped breastfeeding this year, and my body's a little bit more autonomous, and I'm feeling like my brain's firing a little bit better than it was a couple of years ago, just because my kids are a little bit more independent now, and my physical body isn't taking on as much of the motherhood or the parenting load as it was before. So I feel like I'm kind of like getting the sparkle back a little bit, and it feels pretty good.
Love that.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I want to be in a sparkle phase. I'm still in my baby relies on me, and I, am kind of feeling a little bit empty at times, but still energized and joyful,
Yes,
so it's fun to hear that the sparkle
deeply know that.
The
sparkle is within your grasp.
Yes. It's close. It is,
yes.
Sarah, can you share a little more about what you mentioned with setting boundaries for yourself and kind of knowing what you need and what you don't need? I've had so many conversations with women recently who have shared exactly what you said about like, oh, I'm a people pleaser. And that's so hard. And what you said, like, that's in us, a little bit, but some people definitely have it more to an extreme. So what's the work you've done to be able to say like, no, that does not serve me?
It's a great question. I don't know that I've actually thought about how to break that down, but people pleasing has been a lifelong struggle for me. I like to do the right thing. I want to, make sure. What the principal used to call me down to the office in elementary school because they were good friends with my parents, and they knew it would freak me out. And it did. Like the whole time I think, oh my gosh, I must have walked down the wrong hall. Like I would make up ridiculous things that I could have done wrong because I was so nervous to do the wrong thing, disappoint. I'm also an only child, so I think that plays into it too. It's, yes, you get all the attention, but you get all the attention. And so there's really no other sibling to distract from that. Like, okay, I want to do the right thing. Keep the relationship is a huge driver for me. So I was really lucky to grow up with mentors, mostly through church, but then also through school leadership opportunities that did a lot of self-development. So different personality tests. I remember taking the color quiz in high school and finding out I was equal parts blue and yellow, which meant I was relationally driven and fun driven. And that's totally true of me now. If I've been learning a lot about the Enneagram the last couple of years, which I know lots of people are on that kick, and I'm a 2, but I'm often mistyped as a 7. So it's like similar threads. And I've always really appreciated those tools because I don't think they're like law, right? You are a 2, therefore you do X, Y, Z. And I hear that a lot from my husband, who he's like, these things are just, I don't want to be told what I am. He's like, oh, you're such an 8.
That's good.
It totally is 1,000%. But for him, he feels like he's being put in a box. for me, it feels really freeing to have things I can identify with. So in college, we did the Myers-Briggs, and I thought, oh my gosh, who is this person and how are they in my brain? How did that happen? And so then putting those things kind of into practice and different opportunities that I was given to lead people or work with people. So a lot of it's been just through relationships that I've learned this about myself, but also through people really calling things out in me and having a community around me of peers, but also I'll call them mentors or like bosses or things like that, who have been able to say, Sarah, you really excel here, or hey, I've noticed your organizational skills are not so great. Can you work on that? And so I think having its community around me who are willing to mirror things back to me or voice things to me, and then just curiosity to figure out, okay, Lord, I believe that you made me with purpose. And that's always been something I've felt and been taught. So I know that I've been made with purpose. I know that purpose is unique. And I know that that purpose is for your glory. So this desperation to figure out what is that purpose in my life. And it's always been wanting to help people. That's, even if you were to ask me when I was little, what do you want to do when you grow up? I don't know. I just want to help people. And I didn't know what that meant. At first I thought it was going to be singing. So I majored in voice for a couple of years, and then that shifted. And then I was a sociology major, and I thought, I don't know, maybe something in like social work field or something. And so through those experiences though, it's very easy to say yes to things. And I think for a people pleaser who likes to be liked, when someone says, hey, I see this in you, you'd be really good at XYZ, my response would be like, okay, let's do it. And you say yes to so many things and then realize, whoa, I am not functioning at all. And I'm stressed and I'm anxious and I don't know what to do with that. And I think that's kind of where it started, was, being in seasons where I was double booking myself all the time. And then the relational guilt that I would feel was so high. And then, getting married, and my husband and I opened a business together in our first couple of years of marriage. And we also had to have other jobs so that we could afford life. And then we, surprise, got pregnant and weren't planning that. And that's another life shift. And so having to figure out what are the real priorities, and saying yes to my family, which would mean saying no to friends or job opportunities or like teach this workshop. Oh, I really just can't do that right now. And also recognizing that gives other people space to use their gifts, and it doesn't have to be me every time, so that's, I don't know. I hope that answers the question, but that's a lot of how I had to fumble through setting up boundaries, was really just a lot of failure in not setting them up well. And I think specifically in this past year, we owned a business. I was working as resident director at a college. So I was coaching CrossFit classes. That's the business that we owned together. My husband still owns, but I no longer do. And just trying to do and being a mom of 2 children and wanting to be a mom who's really present, and really wrestling with that tug that I know so many of us feel of, I'm working. Should I be working? Can we afford for me not to work? Will I be happy if I'm not working? Can I be at home with my children all day? Am I like qualified for that?
Totally. Yeah.
It's just so much. And so, we had decided last year that I would no longer be a resident director. I'd done it for 5 years. So my husband and my kids and I lived in a dorm in an apartment on a campus, which had so much beauty to it, but you never are able to turn that job off. And students are up all the time, and students are going through really beautiful developmental changes in their college years and are looking for a listening ear or guidance or prayer or whatever. And that people pleaser in me, that person who wants to come alongside, ate that up. Also, I'm an extrovert. So it was like lots, just played to lots of strengths, but that also can be huge weakness areas for me if not kept in check, which my husband's very good at keeping me in check. So that's great. That's a big bonus that I have in my life. But I was supposed to have another job potentially at the college that was not live-in. That felt really perfect. Like, oh my gosh, Lord, okay, this is amazing. And then the pandemic happened the week that, like, the world shut down the week they were supposed to approve the job. And they couldn't because they had no idea about the financial viability that they would be able to actually pay me to do it. And so that was really hard, but also good. And then we were in a season with the gym. It's always been really hard for me because my role has shifted the most throughout the 7 years that we've owned, because I'm the mom and we've chosen and been able to breastfeed. And that means I physically have to be at home a lot. And that means I'm physically not other places. And so just a lot of guilt and just like deep wrestlings with that. And I finally was able to come to a place where I could say, I think I need to not be in this season anymore. Which was really hard because it's relationships that I built and people that I love and work that I love. But our gym manager was in a season where he's ready to say yes to a deeper commitment. And so it was one of those things where it was like, okay, Lord, I feel like this is too coincidental, right? Like everything seems to be working in this path. And so I'm going to release this and put up a boundary there. And then I really had a year where I've kind of been able to, I've had an empty basket and been able to like pick up opportunities and things and say, okay, these are the struggles I've had the last, we'll say 7 years, right? Since owning the gym and getting pregnant and having babies and more responsibilities and things. That's not just me. And what do I want to say yes to? And I have these like questions now that I run through my head of, okay, is it fun for me? Like, is it fun and easy? Meaning, does it use things that just naturally I could do at the drop of a hat, or things that are really life-giving, like light that fire inside of me? Is it going to make me money? And I'm kind of unapologetic about that right now. You know, if I'm going to be away from my children, I want it to be because I'm utilizing gifts the Lord's given me, but also that I'm getting a return on that affects them positively. And being able to send our son to private school this year has been huge because he's been in person 5 days a week. And that's been, I mean, he has blossomed. He's like not a different person, but just he's like a little tiny grown up now. Whereas before he was definitely a crazy 5-year-old boy, you know, but now he's matured so much through that. And I know it would have been so different had he not been in school. And so it's those things. Do I have the time to do it? What is that time taking away from? And I've forced myself to slow down in decision making, which I'm not very good at. I don't know how familiar you are with StrengthsFinder, but I am an activator and a maximizer. And so when something I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's make it happen. And then I'm like, oh no, so many questions I did not ask. Like, Prime example that is not life altering, but felt life altering. My husband loves to do like adventurous, adrenaline junkie things. So he wanted to hike Mount Washington. He knew I would never do that with him. So, so he got a couple of friends. This was when our son was little and we didn't have our daughter yet. And he's like, all right, so you're just going to drive up to the top and pick us up. And I was like, great. Well, that was it. I didn't ask any further questions. And I don't know if you know much about Mount Washington. It is a terrifying drive. Like, you can barely fit 2 cars and there's no railing on the side of the mountain. And I had a sleeping child in the back and I'm afraid of heights. And so I was like, I cried half of the way up. Yeah. I was like, okay, Jesus, please help this not be how I die. And I got to the top of the mountain and I couldn't get out of the car. I was so scared, but his cell phone wasn't working. So I couldn't get a hold of it. So it was like, but that is a prime example of me just being like, yep, let's do it. And then, whoa, okay. Mm-hmm. So many questions I should have asked before starting this adventure. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is a lot. So I've really forced myself in this year to slow down and just say, okay, what does this actually mean for our lives? And is it sustainable? And am I spreading myself too thin, which I also tend to do. So. Yeah.
Shared so many awesome tips, I feel like, in everything you just talked about with, thinking about your personality. Who are you? And the different personality tests that you've taken, being in community with people who are willing to invest in you in a really healthy, positive way to lift you up with the things you're doing well, but also kind of challenge you a little bit on the things that you can improve. It also, I really appreciate what you shared about finding a life partner who can kind of point things out to you and also balance you out in some ways.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It is huge.
And just out of curiosity, was that something you were looking for in a partner when you were in the dating world? Or was that something that God kind of was like, Sarah, you need this person?
A little mix of both. I mean, when I think about all of the mental energy I have put over my lifetime in dreaming about being married and what my spouse would be like, it is an absurd amount of hours, so many hours. I used to pray, Lord, just tattoo his name somewhere so I at least know his name. When I was little, when I would play house, my imaginary husband was always Christopher, and my actual husband is Christopher.
No way.
Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, maybe you were actually.
He was speaking to you for sure.
So that's my husband, Christopher, Chris, he goes by, and he was so much of what I prayed for. I wanted someone who was really confident. I tend to be fearful. And I wanted someone who made me feel really safe. Mm. And he's like 6'2". He's just a big presence. But he also is former military, which is one thing I said I would never want. So that's the one haha, Sarah, hilarious. All these qualities you want, that's why he has them. But he is a protector, defender protector through and through. That's just very much in his personhood. And I really wanted somebody who was passionate. It never mattered to me about what, but whatever they were doing it with their whole self, and they were passionate about it. And that family was a number one priority for them. And I mean, that is my husband to a T. He's the oldest of 4. His family is he would do anything for his family or the people in his life. When we were first married, he was in the military still, in the Navy. We were living in Virginia Beach, and one of his friends and coworkers, they lost their dad and were from Kansas and flew out, for the funeral. And Chris looked at me And he said, I'm going to go. So I'm like, okay, it's in 2 days. He's like, yeah, are you okay if I drive? And so he and another buddy hopped in a car. They drove through the night, like a 2 days drive to Kansas. We're there for just the funeral and then got in the car and drove back. So they were back in time for work. And that's just who he is. I've definitely I have a strong personality, I would say. And he has a very strong personality. And that was something in the dating world that I realized, okay, I need a man who is like able to match me in that or exceed me in that, because I know what's important to me. And I need somebody who can kind of be someone I can bounce things off of. But what I didn't realize I needed, but I have received in spades from my husband, is confrontation. And I don't like historically confrontation, but I'm learning to really appreciate it, which has helped me be able to say no to things and to learn how to do better self-care in general. I think by setting better boundaries and because he like constant confrontation with him all of the days. Just, hey, this is like, you left the door open again in the bathroom. I've mentioned that 1,000 times. Just close the door. Like, that's what, but he said, but this is important to me. And you tell me that I'm a priority, but you're not showing me that I'm a priority.
Wow.
Whoa. Yikes. Yeah, right? Okay. Woo. And he's just, when we were business partners, we had a really, really hard season. He would look at me and be like, I can't defend you in this. And I love you and I want this to be different, but like you have to figure this out. And that really frustrated me at first, because I was like, you're supposed to like swoop in and protect me, but what he actually does is leaves space for me to have courage to just do what I need to do, and doesn't let me back away from things, like from hard things, which is not fun a lot of the time, but has been such a gift to have in a partner, and something I never would have thought I needed so much. But he challenges me a lot. And I always say, I'm like, I'm just I'm a delicate flower. So I need like 17 things I'm doing great. And then you can tell me 1-ish things that I need to work on. And then like 30 things on the back end. And also, please hold my hand while you do it. But he's also very good at, like, we're figuring out how to speak each other's languages in the places where we miss. But he's a communicator, and I am so grateful most of the time for that.
Well, again, it's so cool to hear. It sounds like the most growth for you has come from the challenges that you faced in your life. And and even challenges that God's purposely placed in your life.
Yes.
With
absolutely.
like marriage or the business that you started, and even your kids and the things that he taught you about yourself by becoming a mom when you weren't expecting it.
Yes.
And it's just important. I think some people often feel like, if I'm living in line with what God's calling me to do, life will be easy.
No, not my experience.
And so, your story is just such a great example of God never says it's going to be easy.
No, and in fact, promises the opposite over and over and over again. And when I was mentoring students a lot, that's so much of what we would talk about. Okay, things are great when they're great, but how are we and who are we when inevitably stuff doesn't go our way? Or, a global pandemic happens and all of the things change, or you don't get that A on your paper, or you don't get the job that you were hoping for, or your kid is different than you expected them to be, or your spouse makes a different choice than you would make. And, your Starbucks order is wrong. Who knows, whatever it is, just how are we preparing ourselves to handle stress and challenge well?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's been really important to me to figure out, because life is filled with challenges, but I think you can either look at them as a growth opportunity or look at them as the thing that sunk your ship.
Mm-hmm.
But your perspective is what makes that, and your ability to look at something. And it's not always easy when you're in it, right? Our son had a really terrible accident this fall. We had my grandmother over earlier that day. It was the last burn we were doing in our fire pit in the backyard that we had built, rocks and whatever. So we were burning a lot of the boxes from our move, because when we moved off campus, we moved into the house that we're living in now. And so the fire went out and we didn't think about it for the rest of the day. And my grandmother bought kites for my kids, and my son had run from out of the house, picked up the kite, looked up at it, tripped over a rock, and fell straight into the fire pit and caught himself. I will never forget the screams that came out of his mouth. And he burnt 2nd-degree burns on both of his hands. And it was, I hope that is the worst day that I have as a parent.
Wow.
Ever. He had 1 day of school, and the next day was going to be his first full day. He was so psyched about it. And instead we spent 2 weeks at Shriners Hospital in Boston, and then 3 months in and out every couple of days, getting bandages changed. And we never, ever, ever would have, you don't think about that stuff, and then the guilt and the trauma, and every time you close your eyes hearing, just the whole, or having to pin them down when they're changing the bandages because it hurts so bad. And, he was 5 at the time, he was turning 6 in a couple of months, but, we prep for, part of our, I would say, family philosophy is get yourself, mind, body, spirit, not prepared for battle, but in a place where you could handle something if it happens. And that takes active work, and a lot of encouragement to keep doing those things, because it's really easy to just want to lie on the couch all day sometimes, but, that totally rocked our world, and we had to pivot. And it would have been so easy to be so angry with the Lord and to just say, how could you? We did. Why would you let that happen to him? But he rose to the challenge. And we talked a lot about how God made his body really smart, and that wow, look at your skin, it heals itself. You're like Wolverine, just trying to celebrate him hitting these milestones in his own healing and overcoming. And now when people ask him, he has a tiny little scar on his wrist. That's it. And if people ask him about his year, he's like, well, I fell in a fire pit and I'm kind of awesome because I survived. He just thinks it's the coolest thing ever. And that has been such a reminder to me too, of okay, sometimes God literally throws you in the fire, and you can come out the other side and be okay. And so we're choosing to look at that as a really pivotal, positive moment for our family. Do I wish it never happened 1,000 times over, but I don't know. Otherwise life just gets way too heavy. If I'm constantly feeling everything's against me, everything's going wrong all the time, I'm helpless, I can't do this. And I don't know, that feels too much. And I think it can be so easy for the world to feel that way. So for me to feel okay, what can I control? What's within my power? What's not? And what do I just need to say okay, I can't do anything about that. But yeah, I do. I think challenge can be such a gift if you let it.
If you let it, yes. You also mentioned the word choice, that your family is choosing to view that situation. And it sounds like you as an individual have chosen the other challenges to view them as a positive. Can you just say more about like, what is it that you're choosing?
Yeah. Ooh. I mean, I think ultimately I'm choosing to trust that God is in everything. And I've really been challenging myself to actually read the Bible this year, which sounds like I hate even saying that, but I definitely got in the habit of, I read my Almost First Highest for 30 seconds before bed. So check, did my Jesus time, and I never had the big crazy conversion story, but I often wonder if that is for those of us who were lucky enough to just grow up with the Lord, if it becomes not stale, but like a good marriage, you have to invest in it and not take it for granted that you have a relationship with the creator of all of the universe, So I just wasn't putting in time, and I felt like, okay, in a year where everything is topsy-turvy, where is truth? And so I've been trying to say yes to truth this year. That's actually my word for the year. So for the last 10 years now, I don't even know why I started doing it, but I started praying that the Lord would give me one word that would be something I could meditate on, that he would teach me things through, that would almost like give me a secret hint. Apparently I'm really into secret hints from God. Just give me a little something.
And knows that about you. So that's cool.
Yeah, exactly. And so last year it was freedom, and I was let free of lots of things in my life, voluntarily, and some kicking and screaming. And the first year I ever prayed for a word, it was heart. And my dad had a heart attack that year. And I met my husband that year. And it's been really amazing to see how the Lord has used this piece of my relationship with him. So this year's been truth, and I've actually not until this very moment even had a click of why that's the word. And that's been what's kind of fun about it, is it manifests itself in lots of different ways. And but I've really been trying to stick to what I know to be true. And so that's that I need to be in the word where truth lies, and that my basis of decision making and like harmony with myself and others and sense of peace needs to come from capital T truth. And then also to live out the things that I know are true about being a whole, healthy person. And that's, I need to give my body what it needs so that it has the best chance to handle stress or fun, right? Like I want my body to be able-bodied. I want to be able-bodied. I tell all of my, clients that I'm helping with their fitness, I want to pee on my own when I'm 90. I don't want someone to have to help me into the seat and back up. I want my body to be mobile and at its peak in whatever season it's in, especially on the decline. And that takes putting in good care of it now. So I want to make sure that I'm eating well and enough. I want to make sure that I'm moving my body every day and pressing its limits a little bit, which has been more challenging after children because I've had some birth injuries that add some fun little twists to that. I want to make sure I'm sleeping enough. So I'm saying yes to sleep because my body needs sleep. I'm saying yes to spending time with my kids, trying to turn my phone off, which I'm really bad at. And yeah, so I think that's what it's looked like. So I know that I need my spiritual life to be like, I'm saying yes to good things in my spiritual life. I'm saying yes to good things that I'm listening to and watching and reading, because this year has also been very hard to put up boundaries on that. And it can be overwhelming when you watch the news all the time or read Facebook articles all the time, and allowing myself to see something and just let it scroll, and not to stay ignorant about what's happening, but to actively choose, okay, I'm going to read this book and find a friend or two to talk to about that, or that's applicable to things that are happening in the world this year, in ways that I can educate myself differently on things. Yeah, so I think that's what it's been. I'm really just trying to say yes to things that are true and necessary, and no to things that are, just not helping me and my family reach the goals that we have, together. So.
And you've mentioned a few times through our conversation just how much you love people. And that's been something that you've always known. That's what you wanted to do. Is it accurate to say that that's what you feel like your purpose is?
Yeah. Very much so.
So with that, it sounds like the avenue that God's brought you down is loving people and teaching them to love themselves. Can you share just kind of what drew you down that path, or how you knew that was what God was calling you to do and pursue?
Yeah, I grew up in a house with two parents who are just warm inviters of people, and who had very interesting upbringings. My dad's dad was in a concentration camp for a part of his life during World War II. He was the child of a colonel in the Dutch army, and they were stationed in Indonesia. And so when the Japanese came in and put Indonesians in concentration camps, they were part of that. My grandmother's from Canada and has had a very different kind of story. And then my mom's parents, they lived in Beverly, actually. That's where my mom grew up. But we're definitely people who just salt of the earth, always bringing in the kind of the unwanted people around. And so I grew up where we just had lots of different people in our house all the time, international students, and just saw the value that every person has. Everybody brings something to the table, even if society's definition of that isn't necessarily what they fit. And I think in my relationship with the Lord too, that's one thing that I feel like God's always put on my heart, is trying to see why he put them on the planet. Like, even the roughest, hardest people to be around, they too have something to teach us about who God is, and they also have purpose in their lives. And for whatever reason, whatever circumstances they've been given, maybe they've not had the freedom to do that, or had the support to do that positively. And so I think it kind of started there. I was always the person growing up that everybody would just like spill all of their guts to, and I never really knew why. It's like, why are you telling me this? I don't want to know this. Especially when it started getting like, kids are starting to date in 5th grade, and I was like, la la la, like I just didn't want to know. But people would just talk to me about stuff, and so I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. There's obviously something there. And I think growing up with lots of different people around, even though I would say I kept myself pretty innocent, I'm not surprised by all that much, if that makes sense. Like, I chose to keep myself in a more innocent place, but I wasn't like oblivious to what was happening around me, And so I think I've always kind of been friends with the more on the odd end of things. And just I like a lot of different kinds of people. And so that curiosity of like, okay, I want to know more about God. I want to know more about people and why they are the way they are and what gets you there. And so that's sort of where it stemmed from. And then realizing that there are real ways to help other people live their potential, and seeing somebody figure that out and feel brave enough to take a step to do it, that's like, I feel like an entire musical cast is behind me, and we're like dancing and singing a choreographed number in the street, and like every part of me is just like so excited because they were able to say like yes to who they are, and not be fearful and not worry about what other people are going to say. And I just wish that we did that for each other more. I wish that we truly encouraged one another. I heard this sermon where they said that the word encourage is to literally put courage into someone.
Ooh, I like that.
And I'm like, yes, because you're like telling them truths about who they are, like, but you are so whatever it is, like probably smart, good at math, whatever. And like use that and don't feel like you have to do something else. Certainly periods of life, we have to do things that are not our life's passion, because there's also practical things, that we have to do. But I do think that if we could give each other the freedom and the courage to just like live out who you are, I think we'd have a much happier world.
Yeah.
And so that's really where it stems from, is this curiosity about people, but also really loving that everybody's different. And maybe selfishly, that's because I always like to be unique. Like if I think of the flip side of where that comes from, I think that's part of it too. But I think everybody is unique and stands out in their own way. And that like, if you can foster that in someone, it is amazing to see how everyone around them changes too.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know.
You are speaking my language. This is my same passion too. So I'm just like preach. I love this so much.
Oh, it's just so amazing. Amazing to watch.
Yes. And I'm so thankful to have you here today, because that is the purpose of this podcast too, is to just share exactly what you said with women. Like, be who you are. We want to instill courage in you.
Yes.
You're created with the passions you have, the talents you have, the values you have for a reason.
Yeah.
Figure them out and help you to be that person. So yes, I am just loving everything you're sharing. This has been so fun, Sarah.
Yes.
One last question I have for you,
please,
is what is a big dream that you have? Those are placed on our hearts for reasons as well. And so what is your big dream?
Oh man. I think that, this is like way out there. I think my big dream is that people would recognize that they have so much more control in the outcome of their health than we're taught. And that it's not that complicated, but it is hard and takes persistence and discipline and trust. And I think I just envision a world where that our people's bodies are not a hindrance to them, like their physical bodies, so that the passions and the spirit and all the gifts that they have can just uninterrupted happen. You know, because I see, I mean, even in my parents, right? They have put health as a priority off and on, but have not made lifestyle choices that help in that way. And I didn't start until I was in my early 20s. When I started, I had a very I had a physical hardship and was thankfully put in a chiropractic office of all places. But that's where I started learning about health coming from the inside out and the freedom that can be found when you give your body what it needs. And like my mom watches my children for me during the week, but her mobility is really a challenge. And she has been crushing it recently, working out every day, eating better, and I'm seeing it. I'm seeing that sparkle start to, it's like, okay, I can do these things. I can overcome challenge. I can make this happen. But I also see the opposite for her, that she'll say no to so many things that she wants to do because she's concerned about, is it too exhausting for me, or things like that. And I mean, even for myself, my bladder prolapsed after the birth of our daughter. And what I knew about that originally was that was basically like, well, you can't lift more than 5 pounds. And I had a 10.5-pound baby. So I was like, I don't know how that's all going to work. I've had to dial back my expectations and then slowly focus on rebuilding strength. And now it's 3 years later and I'm still figuring out how to manage that element of my body. But I mean, I really don't think about it all that much anymore. But it took a long time to get there. And so I think I just wish that we had better support systems for people to have body freedom. And that's my big dream, especially for moms, that we just forget about ourselves. And I mean, I've been in those seasons where I've just felt like I remember my husband would call me and ask me how my day was, and I would intentionally tell him all the terrible things that happened because I wanted to prove to him that I was working hard and that my life was hard, For what? Like, what good? And he finally looked at me and he's like, I don't know what's going on with you. This is not the woman that I married. Like, I did not marry a negative woman. I married someone who is like always seeing the positive, pushing through things. So whatever you need to do to change this, you have my support and you need to do it.
Wow.
And that was such a wake up call for me because I thought, oh my gosh, he's right. But I realized my perception was that he just got to do whatever he wanted and that I was stuck at home doing all the late night wake ups and all the diaper changes and working full time and being expected to keep the house clean, and, which so many of us, I think, feel. But once I started saying, okay, I need time to work out for me because that's a stress relief and it's better for my body. And then I'm strong enough to hold our kids and to tackle the things that like bring the groceries up the 3 flights of stairs, or our laundry was in the basement of our building. So it was like 4 flights of stairs anytime we wanted to do laundry. And when I started actually prioritizing myself and doing good self-care, I started just being happier and more joyful and more pleasant to be around and more free in who I am. And so I think that's like my desperate dream for people, is that they learn how to love themselves, to have good self-care, to understand how simple but challenging it is to care for our bodies, and that we would all see that in each other. And like that would be the encouragement. Because it feels like it's been a lot of the opposite. It's like a lot of fear of one another and like hide and don't go outside and don't move your body and don't, and that's that's not the world I want to live in.
Mhm.
And so that's like my big dream. But
Mhm.
especially for moms who are modeling that,
Mhm.
often, not always, because the parenting load is much more equal these days, which I'm so thankful for.
Mhm.
Um, but I do think, especially when kids are young, the burden just by, I mean, what we talked about at the beginning, right? Like, kids physically need your body.
Mhm.
And so that's a very different role that women play,
Mhm.
and are also wrestling with our passions, visions,
Yeah.
things
Mhm.
like that. So I just, but then you get to teach that to your kids. Like,
Mhm.
oh, mom is doing something for herself right now,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
that's a good thing. And like, I can do that for me too. And so it's like, moms are just I don't know, they're like the key
Mhm.
to everything else. But
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, Sarah, your passion is just so like overflowing. And I love the dream that you have. Partially because I'm a mom and I'm like, ooh, that sounds fantastic. But also I think just for people in general to just have that body freedom was kind of the term you used. And that just sounds so, what a beautiful world to have the freedom from your body to be able to live out your passions, live out your joys, and really pursue the things that God's calling you to do. And it sounds like that's something you're doing in your business, is helping people to have that body freedom.
Yeah, trying.
So tell us, how can people find you if they want to work with you? Tell us all
Yeah.
about.
So you can find me on Instagram. That's where I mostly live. I do have a Facebook page, but it's really, the party is on Instagram. So you can find me at Wellness with Sarah Jean. And right now, I've been doing Faster Way to Fat Loss, has been the vessel of helping women. And my dad who's doing it too. So good. Finding that body freedom and kind of getting their sparkle back and doing that, letting that sparkle shine through. And so what that looks like is 6-week um, challenges. I don't know if that's the right word, but a 6-week introduction into a lifestyle that is moving your body every day and um, feeding your body what it needs, and that's specified to each person. So um, I have a new round starting May 3rd. So if you're interested, you can look more at that on the link in my bio on Instagram. And then trying to just help women to have access to things that will allow their bodies to feel and look their best. So that's where Beauty Counter kind of comes in for me too. So I am a consultant for Beauty Counter, and so many of the products that we use are harmful to our bodies because the FDA doesn't actually regulate what goes in our beauty products specifically. The EU, there's 1,200 chemicals that they will not allow in personal care and beauty products, and the United States has 30. 30. Yeah.
That is the word that comes to mind, is that is gross. I can't believe
Right?
that's a thing.
Yes. And so the beauty industry is a self-regulated industry, and they can put whatever they want outside of those 30 products. And we know now how damaging to our hormone cycles, especially for women, perfumes and fragrance and whatever, even retinol, like so many of these things that we use every day, hand creams, hand sanitizers now. There's just so much that messes with that really beautiful ecosystem that we need to keep in our bodies. And so I love Beauty Counter because not only do they have 1,800 ingredients that are on their personal never list,
Mm.
but they're an environmental working group certified company, which means that all of their products, including the bottles and things that they're in, are not harmful to the environment. They also lobby Congress to change beauty laws. So not only do they personally take action, but they advocate for others to take action, which I think is a really beautiful thing when you actually really care about something. And so that's where that kind of fits into my overall hope for women to to live well. So all of that stuff is on my Instagram handle, but I would love even to just, if you're like, I just need some encouragement, just send me a DM and I'm happy to put a little courage in your heart, because I want us all to be doing that more for each other as women, like less competition and more celebration.
Love it. And you are a fun follow. You post like such encouraging things all the time. So I'll make sure to link to your Instagram. And I'll also add the link to your page with all the beauty counter links and your challenges or introductions that you shared about. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, Sarah, so much for being here. And I feel like we need to get a cup of coffee in real life sometime.
Yes, please.
This has been Thanks so much for tuning in. I'd love to hear what you learned from this episode, so feel free to shoot me a message or leave me a comment. And don't forget to subscribe for more tools to live a purpose-filled life.